welcome back. We are still in Teen Week, and today we're going to talk about what's normal and when should you get your teen help. So
But before we do, let's go to another one of the reviews. Thank you so much, Hannah Raoul. I can watch and listen again and again. It's so helpful and important. Great. Thanks. I love it too. Well, we love you back. Thank you so much. Normal. So this is actually going to surprise people because kids act badly and they go, oh, he's just a teenager. That's normal. Well, that's not normal. They actually did a study out of Chicago a long time ago looking at 10,000 teenagers. A third of them never had any problems, pretty much like Chloe. She's consistent, hardworking, loving. Now, she can be anxious and worried, but she doesn't. You know, we're not constantly thinking about teenage therapy.
No, there's no drugs, alcohol, like that kind of stuff.
We scanned her, but we do that because she's in our family.
She wanted to see her brain. She actually wanted to see it.
So a third of teenagers, they never have problems. Another third of teenagers, every once in a while, they would have problems. And then another third, they had problems all the time. So if your teenager is really struggling most of the time, that's a sign you need to get them help.
Right.
And did you know that when a child or a teen first has their first symptoms of trouble, it's on average 11 years before they see their first therapist.
Wow.
They are suffering for more than a decade before they actually get help. I'm not okay with that. That's why in our high school course, we have a high school course, hopefully you know about, called Brain Thrive by 25. You can learn more about it at brainthriveby25.com. We actually have a module in the course on brain health, mental health issues like ADD, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder. And you just can't believe the number of stories we get. After we taught it, there was a girl that came up to us after class and she's just crying. And she goes, I never had a name for it, but because I have PTSD. I'm like, oh, sweetheart, what happened? She said, I was babysitting my little brother when I was 7 and he got away from me and ended up drowning. And I have nightmares.
7?
Watching her little brother at 7. And she said, I have nightmares and I'm racked with guilt and I see his dead body over and over again. It's horrifying. And we said there's help for it. And we connected her up with an EMDR therapist to help her work through the trauma. But there's so many kids who are struggling with a mental health issue and nobody knows.
So let's talk for a second because so Chloe comes up to me about a week ago and this is really funny. It's actually a funny story. So because we're so open with her, because it's safe to say things in our house, she'll say things I think that a lot of teenagers aren't willing to tell their parents. And it's actually a very funny conversation. So she was sort of pulling back on something that I was trying to talk to her about, and she was disagreeing with me, and I said, I talked to her about it, and she said to me, here's what she said. She goes, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, there's just something wrong with this. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me lately, but the last couple months, she goes, I all of a sudden feel myself wanting to say no to you for no apparent reason. She's like, I don't even know why. I just want to say no. And I have this question in my head. She's being very honest. And she goes, and I'm trying not to laugh out loud. And she's like, and I have this thought in my head, like, well, how do you know what's best for me? And like, how do you know everything for me? And so, and I could have reacted and just gotten mad at her. But because I'm armed with information, right? Because it's easy to be reactive in that moment and bristle. and go, yeah, why are you doing that? But being armed with information, like childhood development information, I sat back, I let her finish, and I said, do you actually want to know the answer to that? And she said, yes. It's like frustrating. She goes, I know my life is easier if I just do what you say, but I don't want to all the time. And she's like, and that's not really like me. And I go, well, that's funny that you say that because I know the reason why. And she said, why? I go, I don't want to minimize it by saying it's because you're 15. But what it really is because it's childhood development. And at 15, your 2 tasks are to become independent and figure out who the heck you want to be. And
Separate.
Right. I said, you're now figuring out I'm not the like hero of your entire life. You may look up to me, you may respect me, but you're starting to want to take charge of your own life.
Yeah, it's so irritating.
And that's normal,
when they're
though.
15, they begin to see all of your flaws. And then they point them out
Yes.
on a routine basis. And then when their brain's done, they are back to, you're amazing.
Right.
And they can hold the fact that you're not perfect.
Right.
With
'Cause
the
they're not
fact
perfect.
that you're amazing. And your relationship can go back to being more normal. So I often tell parents, we just got to get them to 25.
Right.
Let's just keep them safe until
Once they get
they're
out of
25.
college, right. But my point with that was this. Many people see that as teenagers are being rebellious, they're irritating, they're whatever. And it is irritating, but that part of it is normal. So how do you sort of differentiate that normalness from the problem child? Like, I know that that's normal.
Well, what I want to do before we're over with this podcast is talk about when to know when they need help.
Right, but
So
that's
if
part of it is knowing normal from not normal.
So, yes. So know that chronic trouble is not normal for teenagers. That's a sign of trouble. So if you find 6 or 7 or 8, 9, 10 days out of 10, you're struggling with them, something's going on either with you or with them. And so getting assessed is
But
important.
what kind of struggling are we talking about?
I'm
Problems in
going
school?
to talk about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Listen. Any form of self-harm,
Okay.
cutting, talking of suicide, suicidal gestures, having their friends tell you that they told them about suicide. That's a 911 emergency call that they need to be assessed immediately. And cutting is actually very common. Substance abuse, marijuana use is common, but it's not good for them. I had that conversation earlier this week with one of my friends, 14-year-old starting to smoke pot. Pot increases the risk of psychosis 450%.
But so many-
I don't care if everybody's
Right.
doing it.
So many parents think it's
because
normal.
It's not good for them, and it's damaging a developing brain. Sadness. Now, not that sadness is there for an hour.
Transient,
But
right.
sadness that's just like it's been a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
So persistent.
Irritability that, they're snapping. They're more negative than they use. High highs and low lows. You have to be concerned about kids having panic attacks. There's treatment for that, and it's important to get, because if you don't, they begin to start avoiding friends, sports, classes, and so on. If they're chronically fatigued, if their sleep cycle really begins to change, those are some symptoms that something may be going on in their brain. More common after head injuries. They're more common during when parents are getting divorced, which has been very common the last 3 decades, right? If they're struggling in school, it's important to assess why. There's actually a brand new SPEC study out this morning on learning disabilities from China. And SPEC, you could see the differences on scans, which I've known for a long time. So those are some of the things. We love helping children and teenagers here at Amen.
Yeah, because they're amazing even when they're struggling, when they start to figure it out and trust you and get help for themselves, and they don't feel that shame in being able to share it and get help. Teenagers are cool. They're amazing.
Well, I had an appointment earlier this week with this girl that was diagnosed with ADD. And I figured out she also had something called the Irlen Syndrome, which is a visual processing problem. And we're actually going to have Helen Irlen on in
fun.
a couple of weeks. We're really excited about that. But when she put on the glasses, she actually saw her mother's full face for the first time.
Isn't that crazy? It's crazy.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So when a child is struggling, notice it. Get them the help they need. Stay with us. Use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or on our supplements at brainmdhealth.com. Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to iTunes and leave a review, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to get a free signed copy of the Brain Warriors Way and the Brain Warriors Way cookbook we give away every month.